Hello, welcome to the JM Academy. My name's Alison Tarry and today we're going to be looking at seed beading, specifically the Seleni spirals. Seleni spirals, so it's based on a stitch called peyote, but don't worry, I'm going to give you a recap on how to do tubular peyote. What we're looking at is a specific form. So when we're using different sized beads to create a spiral. So although it's tubular, and you're actually forcing this spiral because of the different sizes of the beads. So you've got 4 different sizes of the beads in these examples, and we go from a 15, which are tiny. Don't forget, the larger the number, the smaller the bead. So we start with a 15, then we go to an 11, a 10, and then a 6. Now the 6, in some of these examples we've got 6s, we've also got different shaped beads, pressed beads, so we've got dragon scale beads, we've got gecko beads. You can use all sorts of different beads as your, let's call it I call it the spine bead. So it's the bead that goes across the top of the spiral. So if I show you on here, the beads that are sticking out on here, that's what I call the spine. It's the bit that runs along the outer edge of the spiral, really emphasises it. So when you've just got a 6, hang on, let me pull this one over here. So this will give you a good example. So in here you've got 4 different types of beads. Oh no, 3 different types of beads, because that one and the end one are the same. So these are your 6-Os, which is your standard sort of bead. Then you've got a dragon bead and a gecko bead. You can use all sorts of beads. I've used dagger beads, which are incredibly long, but you want a focal bead. So that bead there gives you the focus of the spiral. It really emphasises it. So that's what you want to be doing. Thinking about doing, but the main style, shall we say, uses all the rounds, and so you're using the 6s. So how does the spiral work? Well, when you put together your beads, because some are bigger than the others, obviously they're taking up more room. So if they're taking up more room there, and this is smaller, they're going to go round quicker than the others. So that's how it forms the spiral. It's something people get very scared of. Please don't be scared. It is not as complicated as you think. So it looks very elaborate. It looks fantastic. It's one of my favourite beading techniques, but it's not as complicated as you think. It's complicated in our minds, not in the practice, not in the execution. And as you can see on that one, and then we've got a little pendant here, you don't have to do a full necklace of it. So you can have just a tube of it as earrings, or you can graduate that, but that makes a lovely statement, and that will move. That will give you wonderful movement. So don't think you've got to do a full necklace of it either. So that's a bit about what we're going to do. What do you need? You're going to need some beading thread, a fire line, a wildfire, any of them, any bead weaving thread, but you want something that's a £6 or less. So for those of you who don't know what the poundage is about, it's the breaking point of that thread. So beading thread originated from fishing line. So the poundage relates to the pound of fish you could catch before your line snapped. So that's traditionally where that came from. So it's very rare you're going to get £6 of seed beading around your neck, but it does give you a finer grade. Now you're using 15 beads. They're one of the smallest. They're not the smallest, but they're a very small bead. So you don't want a big thick thread going through them, because you're passing through it several times. The more times you pass through it, obviously it gets clogged up with thread in the middle, and they're only glass, so you can split them apart. So bear that in mind. If you can, you want a £6 or a £4. to go through. Obviously it's going to swim in the big beads, but that doesn't matter because it will still hold them in place. So you need some thread, you need your beads. You're going to go through a lot. One 8-9 gram tube of 15s should be enough to do you a necklace. So you probably need 2 of your 11s, 2 or 3 of your 8s, and then you're going to go through several of these. And if you're using any of the press beads, you're going to go through more. The reason you need more tubes is because obviously you're getting more in this tube than in this tube. You've probably got more in this tube than in those 3 tubes put together, and because these are large, obviously you're getting less beads, so you need more tubes. So just bear that in mind. You're going to need some form of clasp. I've used a variety of clasps. It doesn't matter which clasp you use, be they toggle clasps, magnetic clasps. I love magnetic clasps on bracelets because they're so easy to fasten. Trigger clasps or lobster claws, it doesn't matter. Or for instance, on this one here, you can thread a chain or seed beads straight through the middle because you've got quite a large aperture, so you can actually use that and not have a clasp directly attached if you want. You could put it straight on a chain and it's good. So you're also going to need something for your seed beads to go on, some sort of beading mat, because otherwise they're going to roll everywhere. A pair of good quality scissors because you want to get right in there to cut your threads, and a mandrel. Now you can get along, you don't have to buy any special mandrel. This happens to be one from my wire work. You can use a knitting needle. You want something that's more or less straight, not tapered, but if you use sort of further down a knitting needle, they're fine. You can use a rolled up piece of paper. It doesn't have to be anything. You don't have to go buy anything, but you will want something. When you're starting, it's very tricky to hold it. If you've got one of these, it takes that away. Needles, I would recommend you use a 12 or finer. Again, because we've got the narrow beads, the small beads, and you're going to pass through several times. So the smaller the needle, the smaller the thread, the easier it will be. If you're pulling your needle through and it's really stuck, sometimes you can give it a little wiggle. Don't force it, you'll snap your bead. If you do snap a bead, don't worry, it's not the end of the world. You can put another one in. You can sew one in, but that means you're going through even more times on the beads adjacent, so just be aware of that. You don't have to cut it, you can put it on top and the thread will hide behind, but you are putting thread through the ones next to it, so just be aware of that. So if you're getting stuck, you're better to back that needle out and use a finer needle. So now we've had a discussion of all that, let's get on to the next chapter and begin. So in this chapter, I'm just going to give you a quick refresher on tubular peyote. So Seleni, as I said, it is tubular peyote with different size beads. So I just wanted to give you a quick refresh on the 2 different types. So there's even count and odd count tubular peyote. It's personal preference. I prefer the odd count because you don't have to do what's called stepping up. Even count is you do a row, then another row. So each time you start the next row, you have to step up, which means going on to the next row. When you do odd count, it's a continuous spiral. So you're just going round and round and round and round. So obviously you're skipping a step. The pros and cons of that. When you do odd count, it is possible to lose where you're at. Now I think with Seleni, it's very easy, and I'll share you my trick when we come to that chapter. So the odd count, you've got to step up. You come to an end of a row and you're on the next row. Seleni, you don't have that. You could stop anywhere in that row. So spiraling. Tubular peyote. Peyote is a stitch that goes up and down. So I'm going to put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We'll start with 7. We'll start with odd count. So this has got 7 beads on it. I'm going to tie them in a knot to form my tube. And I've made this too small for my mandrel, have I? It will go in. So again, I've tied them in a knot. I've made my basic tube. I'm going to just pop that on a mandrel. So now I can hold it on the mandrel. I'm not trying to fiddly. Trying to hold those beads isn't the easiest thing in the world. Come here, needle. So I've got 7 beads. So we're now going to be doing every other bead. So I'm going to show you so this is row 1 and 2. We're now going to add row 3. So I'm going to go through my first bead because I never like starting from a knot. So I'm going to go through my first bead, and then I'm going to pick up the green ones to very distinguish. So we miss the next bead and we go in to the next one. Pop that on top. Just make sure it sits on top and pull. So we go pick up the next one. So you're coming out of that bead, you skip this one and go straight through that next bead and pop it on top. So these, it is quite a big mandrel for this, so they will be quite loose. That is about the tension some people use, so it's not a problem. I just tend to use a tighter tension. So each time you're coming out of a bead on the black beads, you're missing the next one and you're threading through the one after. And you can see you're getting some form of castellation happening. Now, when we get round to the last bead, we're coming out of this bead, we skip this bead, so we automatically go into that next one. So this is where we're automatically just taking that jump to the next row up. So I'm going to use the green again, go through that bead, and that gives you that next row up. So now, and from forever on, for however long you want to do it, you're just picking up your bead and going through the sticky up one. So each bead, you just pick up the next bead and go through the next one that's sticking up. This is a very unnatural position to the camera. So we're going to pick up that bead, go through that next sticky up one, and you'll start getting this alternating row. So we're now coming round to the end. So we've done 3 beads. So when you start, you halve the number of beads. So that first row has become row 1 and 2. Then we've got row 3. We've just done row 4. So you're doing 3.5 beads a row. So that means you do 3 beads, and then your 4th bead is half on that row, half on the upper row. So I'm going to do it with my black, and it will go into that black bead of the current row. So pull that 2, and then it pops up. So you can see if you just do this and keep going alternating, you're going to get a spiral forming naturally because of the bead colours. So this will follow on going round and round and round. You'll get this spiral happening, but you're going up and down, up and down. So that is odd count peyote. How does that differ to even? So let's take that off and just redo that for some even count. There we go. I'll just pop those out of the way. So even count is what it says on the tin. You've got an even number. So we're going to do 8 beads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It is, like I say, very much a personal preference. Some people prefer even count. When you're doing flat, I think even count is easier than odd count. When you're doing tubular, I think odd count is easier than even. But try both. Before you do a Seleni, try it with just some 8s or some 11s and just see how you get on. So we've got our 8 beads in our circle. We've popped it on our mandrel. So I'm coming out of that one. Then I'm going to go into the next one. And you're going to get exactly the same. It's going to pop above. The difference is when we've done them all. So for this one, we're coming out of one, skip one, go into the next one, up pops your bead, miss one, into the next one, up pops your bead. And I would say if you've never done peyote before, do a length, spend a session. So we've got a fourth one going in. We're coming into this black one, which is the one we first came out of. Hang on a second, let me show you. So we're going to skip that one. You can see where you've come out to the green one, you're going in through this black one and you're stepping up to the green one. Now when we did the odd, we just automatically went to the next row. This we've actually had to step up into that bead and then you carry on. So you're going to get rings rather than a spiral pattern if you just keep doing alternating. So you keep going round and you've got 4 per row. So that's the easiest way to think, am I doing odd or even? If it's odd, then you're doing a half a bead each time. Cut your first row in half and then see how many beads you're going round, and do you get a full set of beads. So we're going to come back to this green one. So we've now got 4 black ones on there. If I hold it that way up, you can, and gone, there you go. So you can see the 4 black ones have gone into the 4 green ones. You haven't got an oddity. So our next row has got to go up through that black one to step up. So it works exactly the same. I'm going to fetch that back down. So it works just the same. You'll still get a similar effect, but you've got to step up. You'll still get the spiral for the Seleni because that is created by the different sizes of the beads. So that's your 2 types. Have a go at both and find which you're comfier working with. And then we'll go on to the next chapter and show you how to do your spiral. So in this chapter, we're going to look at odd count Seleni spirals. So we've just looked at how the odd count, you miss the step up, which I prefer. So we want to start by loading our needle. Now, unlike before where I used 7 beads, we're now going to use a lot of beads. So we've got our 15s, we've got our 11s, our 8s and our 6s. Like I say, you can alter the 6 to change the look of the piece. The other thing you can do is alter the numbers of these to change the tightness of your spiral. So if you want a more drawn out spiral, then you add more of each of the other beads and come down to the point. So it will give you a more gentle spiral rather than a tight corkscrew spiral. So have a play with that, but learn the spiral first before you start messing. Okay, so we're going to start. We want 3 of our 15s, 2 of our 11s, 2 of our 8s, 2 of our 6s, slide them down, 2 of our 8s, 2 of our 15s, and then another 2 of our 15s. So this is our starting lineup. Yeah, you can barely see the 15s, the small beads. Now you can come round, tie a knot with it. You can thread it through, however you want to do it. I'm just going to tie a knot for ease. You can actually start this at the end of the, come here, at the end of the 15s if you want. I have a habit of starting it in the middle. I don't know why. That's just my personal taste. You can, like I say, start it at the end. So we're going to fetch that knot in and pop that. So that's our first circle. So as we said before, you're doubling up on everything. This is your row 1 and row 2. Okay, so we're going to pop that in our mandrel. Now this is going to be a bit loose. However, once we start spiraling, this will tighten down. So this inner circle here really compresses. So for instance, I've got an example here that I've been working on. So it's exactly the same number of seed beads and exactly the same sizes. However, the mandrel is so much that barely fits through there, and yet you've got loads of space. So what happens is this actually starts tilting like that, which causes it all to compress. So bear that in mind. You can start with a thicker mandrel if you want. So there's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't start with something quite chunky. Let me get one of these out. If it makes it easier to hold on to, but once it starts spiraling, this will not go at all through there. It stops. There's a cinch point. You can see where it cinches in, and this isn't because I've pulled it tighter or anything like that. That is purely because of the way the beads expand this bit, which turns that, which makes it tighter. So the corkscrew effect, you can see how that affects it, because this won't actually fit on there. So just bear in mind with that. So the other thing is, I never start, like I say, I never start on where the knot is. So I'll always go through my first bead. There we go. So I said earlier there are some tricks. One trick is lay your beads out. So whatever order you're doing them, if you want, you can actually lay them backwards. So I go up my row and then back down my row. These I do once. Well, this I do once, this I do 5 times, but whereas this you do once on the way up, and then you do those 2 on the way back down again. So you're just working backwards and forwards. It makes it easier than if they're all in different places. Yes, you can pick the right size. They're obviously different sizes, but you've got to go like that. This is just, it becomes a rhythm. So you will get a very good rhythm very quickly by having them set out. So set them, it doesn't, the other thing to say is it does not matter whether you're left or right-handed. It does not matter whether you go clockwise or anti-clockwise around your spiral, so long as you keep the same direction. So if I just pull this one over here and fetch this here for you. Right, so if we look at these 2 here, yeah, they're going in different directions. So one's a left-handed spiral and one's a right-handed spiral. If I fetch this one in, you can see this is the same direction as that. They're all going that direction. This one, they're going in that direction. So what will naturally happen is, depending on whether you're left or right-handed, depending on how you work, you will develop a handed way of doing it. So you will automatically find the way that suits you. So if you do it in the, I tend to work, oh no, hang on a minute, I'll have to look at that. I tend to work usually, and I'm automatically doing it differently. I'm going anti-clockwise here. No, I'm going clockwise. Yeah, so if I'm going that way round, I could go that way round. So I'm going in a clockwise direction. So I'm going this way around. It does not matter. All that will happen is your corkscrew will be reversed. Okay, so for the whole piece, but just keep to that direction. If you're not sure and you stop and you're going to walk away, there are ways of knowing which way you're going, but you'll soon notice if you've turned direction, because it will not sit right. You can reverse it, but if you don't reverse it in the right way, it will look odd. So you'll very quickly see, hang on a minute, that's not coming in the right place. So that's another thing. As you're going around, as you're doing it, whichever direction of Seleni you're doing, whatever bead you have just come out of, that's the bead you want to pick up next. So I am coming out of one of the 15s. So my next bead, I'm going to skip that 15. I've just come out of a 15. Oh, where's my needle? I've just come out of a 15, therefore I pick up a 15 and I go through the first of the 11s. Okay, pull it down. Right, now it's going to be quite difficult to see the 15s, but that one is just sticking up there. I appreciate they're a smaller bead to see, so you'll see it more. I've just come out of my 11, so the next bead I want to pick up is my 11. I'm going to skip the next bead, which is the 11, and go through the first of the 8s. So this first round is a slightly odd round. This is where we're on row 3, and what you'll find is if it's not very tight, you can just pull it tighter. They should sit above each other. So that is now sitting on top of the previous 11. We've now come out of a 10, so we're going to pick up an 8, pick up an 8, skip the next 8 and go through your first 6. Okay. Now with all things seed beading, the first couple of rows are awkward. This is even more so. So you're working with different sizes, it's slipping all over the place until you get that first few rows done. It will carry on doing that. So we're going to pick up we've come out of a 6, pick up a 6, go through that first 8. So we've come up the sizes, we're now going to go back down. So we're going to pick up that 6, he sits next to there. We've come out of an 8, pick up your next 8, and you're going to go through that first 11. There we go. I've got quite a long thread, so just keep an eye on your thread that you don't tangle the end, get knots in it, because bearing in mind you've got very small beads that you're dealing with, so stop knots before they happen. You've come out of an 11, pick up another 11, go through your first topaz, your first 15. Okay, make sure it's sitting on top and pull. So we can now see we're getting this castellation that's very peyote happening. So we've now got our last few. We're going to come out of a 15, so we're missing that 15, we're going in through the next 15, pull that, then we've come out of a 15. Now we've come round to the start, so we've come out of a 15, we're going to go into that first 15 we did, going up to the next level. So we're not doing a step up, we're automatically on the next level. So I'm going to do that again, and then this will have a little bit more structure and you'll be able to see it a bit more. Now you will only have 3 of your 15s, and that's where it pushes you. So you've come out of a 15, so you want to pick up another 15, and for the first time we're now going, the 15 is going to sit above the 11. And obviously that's a lot smaller than the 11, so it actually crimps it in. You can see just by pulling it, it tightens by coming in a bit. The same way you've come out of an 11, so you skip the next one and you're going in through this 8. So you're now, each of your beads is sitting above the next size. Can you see that? So you've come out of there and gone into there. So we've come out of the 8, we're going to go into that 6 there. And you think, how on earth are they going to, it's going to look really odd because they're going to be massive gaps. It doesn't, that's what creates your spiral. It's so clever. We've come out of a 6, so come on, you should be sitting up there. So we're going to go skip the next one and go through that 8 and pull it tight. So we're now starting to get a little bit of structure, and you can see how you've gone hardly any distance there, but you've made massive distance there. So already your piece is starting to go in a spiral. So we've come out of this 8. It is something that you need to practice to get it, but don't build it up into an issue. Just remember, whatever you come out of, that's the bead you pick up, and you're going into one that's different. Once you've gone past that first row, and apart from your 3 15s, you're always going into a different bead. So we've come out of a 15, we're going through to the next 15, and they can be quite difficult to see, so you want decent lighting. So 1, so that's my first one. Come out of a 15, we're going into the next 15, second one, and we've come out of that one. I've done an extra one there. That's the easy thing to do is, and I'm going to show you where I've done it. So I've added, oh no, I've just miscounted. 1, 2. There we go, into there. So now we're ready to go back up again. So we're going to pick up our next one of those into the 11. And you can see you're getting this nice spiral. So we'll do one more round into the 8, because until you start doing this, you don't see that spiral forming, and you have to get used to, so you've come out of this one, you're going into the next one. You're going to have to get used to the fact that you've got different levels. Okay, so you're skipping that one. This is the hardest thing, is that one is above that one, but it's this one you're doing. You're always skipping one. Don't forget to skip one. It looks like that one should have been next, but you need to skip it. And as soon as you pull that, it'll slop into place. But until you've got a few rows on there, it doesn't look natural because it's bigger. Going down, it's easy because they're automatically lower. So we're going into the next one, coming out of that turquoise, picking up a turquoise, going into that turquoise, sorry, into that topaz, and then we've got our 1, 2, 3 into that last turquoise. So you can see your spiral starting to create as you're going around. They all start spiraling around, and that just builds up and up and up. So if I fetch this one in, this has been going for quite a bit longer. You can see, and this one I've done in the opposite direction. That's typical, isn't it? So you can see you're still going round in the same. So you've got your 1, 2, 3 of your light ones. Actually, I'm going to do that so you can see it clearly with the different colours, and that will really highlight it for you. Let me just get that. I can't stress enough, take your time. This is not a quick stitch. You'll get to do about an inch an hour. You'll get quicker than that, but if you're doing an inch an hour, you're doing a well. So if you want to make something like a 20-inch necklace, It's going to take you about 20 hours. It's not the quickest stitch. Is it a rewarding stitch? It's an amazingly rewarding stitch. Once you've achieved a Seleni, you'll not look back. So I'm going to do, so I've changed colours. All these colours are different, so it will really show up. So we're going to do our one, and when you've done maybe an inch, maybe you've got a couple of corkscrews, then I would take it off the mandrel. It then becomes quite easy to hold. It's a natural, you've got natural grip, so your fingers sit into where the coils are, so it becomes very easy now. You know, it's almost like made for your fingers. It becomes very easy to hold. So we're going to go one, and this will really show up more with the different colour. Two, into that pale blue, which is your first, is your 11. So we're coming out of that 11, we're going to pick up a turquoise and go through to our 8. So they automatically sit on the wrong size, apart from those two. Right, we're going to go through to our 8. And you can also see, now you've got your spiral solidified, for want of a better word, and not as loose as the first few rows, it does become quite easy to say, no, I'm not going through that one, I'm going through the second one, because it is sticking up. But when you the first few, you're like, oh, hang on a minute, it's not as obvious. So we've come out of a 6, we're going to go down. You can do these the same colour. We've come out of an 8, so I'm going to pick up an 8 and go through an 11. I would tend not to do a solid colour. So that's done a complete circle of the other colours, and you can see even where these are, that they're sitting one on top of the other. And you just keep going, because you're on an odd count. You just keep going around and round and round and round until you've done enough. I'm just going to grab this one over here. So this is a monochrome colour, but if you look carefully, I've used different textures. Let me just roll him. There we go. He'll sit now. So I've got a gloss black, then I've got a matte black, then I've got a gunmetal, then I've got a gloss black in the 15s. So although it's one colour, it's not just a flat black. If I did all those with gloss, it would take away from your design. So when you're using colours, think about that. Sometimes you'll put together colours that you're like, oh no, I wouldn't do that, and they work beautifully. So have a think about what colours you use. You know, what colour do you want to emphasise? You know, this is all greens, except for the middle is a white, but then you've got sort of 3 different shades of green, sort of a bluey green to a very green, a limey green, going to this variable green, because it's got a coating on it. So have a think about that when you're doing it, because it can have an effect on how on how your spiral will work. It will work beautifully. It will work beautifully if you are doing it in one colour, because it is such a classic stitch. And whether you want it to, I mean, I would be like, you need a big bale to put this, to hang something from this, but you can. It's just a very concerted rope. It makes beautiful bracelets. It makes beautiful, like we say, just a tube. Hang on, there we go. Like that necklace, you've just got a short section of it. It's actually only that section, which is going to take you a couple of hours to do. You know, think about things like that when you're designing them. But that is your odd count peyote. So now we're going to go on to the next chapter. So in this chapter, we're going to look at even count. We're also going to consider at the same time how to expand your spiral. So as you've seen here, we've got quite a tight spiral. So I'm going to show you, and you can do this with odd or even count, but I'm going to show you with the even, how to make this bigger. And there's a few different ways of doing it. So let's start. So with the even count, you basically, if you're going to do the same, you're using the same amount of beads apart from this. So there's a couple of ways. This is always going to be an even number. So when you're doing the odd count, your 11s, the easiest way to monitor it is your 11s are an odd count. So I did 5, you could do 7, you could do 9, that will expand the middle bit. If you expand this bit in here, it expands that out, it pushes these further apart, so your peaks, your backbone becomes further apart. But you can also double up on all of the beads. I would always leave 1 at the top because I don't think it looks right with 2. But you could have 2 of your 8s, 2 of your 11s, so it makes it a gentler curve, a gentler spiral. It just all becomes elongated. So we're going to do the easy one, and we're going to make the inside bit, the 15s, we're going to double up, well not double up, we're going to make that a bigger number, and we're going to do it even. So we're looking at 2 things here. So we want an even number. So we've done 5. We're going to have a look at 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, as I said before, I started in the middle of the 5. I'm starting at the start of the 8. Either works. They both work the same as each other. It doesn't really matter. This gives me an easier start point for doing the step up because I know where my start is, and it's always going to be with these beads. If you have a look at this one here, the pendant version, that is an even count. Now it's so difficult if I used, instead of 5 beads, I used 6. The difference between that and that is near on impossible to tell. So in the general course of the matter, it's down to personal preference. You're not really going to see, unless someone gets right in there and counts those beads, and in which case you said, whoa, back off please. So unless they get that close, you're not really going to tell which is which. So I'm going to pull that one over. So yeah, so this one is your even count, and that's got 6 beads instead of the 5. I've put 8 on here, and you'll see I'll need to put the rest of the beads on, Alison. So 2 of your 11s, 2 of your 8s, 2 of your 6s, 2 of your 8s, 2 of your 11s, and then we're back to the start of our spiral, our run. So if I hold those out for you, that's what it looks like. So you've got 8 instead of 5, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. So we know where we're going to be going. So we're going to wrap that around there, tie it in a knot. You don't want to tie this knot so tight, but you don't want it to have it loose, but you do want to have a little bit of wiggle room. If you pull that really, really mega tight, what will happen is it will be very difficult to get to the beads. So they'll be so close together and so crammed in there that it will be really difficult. Now, because this is a bit bigger, I've gone for my trusty all-size mandrel, and I'm just going to slide that, which is a rolled up piece of paper, as you can see, just a rolled up piece of paper. Now, depending on which way I put this on, I'm actually going to be going in the same direction. I could flip that over and start here, and that would turn it in the other way. So we're just going to pop that in here. So our starting point, we're going to go through that first bead. Come on. Right, so we're off. So we're going to pick up our next bead, skip one, go into the next one. When you're doing your first row on whichever, whether you do it odd or even, keep the beads to the top. Always keep the beads to the top when they're coming through. It just makes it easier. You know which bead you're at. So we're skipping the next one and going through the next one. And we're creating those classic castellation, uppy, downy, inny, outy, whatever you want to call it, that is peyote's signature. So we're going through that one. So we've come out of 1, 2, 3, 4, out of our last one, then we're going to pick up that first. There we go, and we've picked up our first 8, 11. So we're skipping our 11, picking up our 8. Skipping our next one, picking up our 6. The 6s, see how much room you get to move. That's the hardest one until you get your spiral established. You can see when I pull that tight, this is going to be quite tight almost immediately. So I'm going to pick up the 8, go through the 11. Because nearly half of your go round is with smaller size beads. So we're going to come out of there and in through that first 15. Now we're going through our next 15, which is come out of a 15, go in through a 15. That still works. It still holds for the odd and the even. We've come out of a 15, we're going through our next 15. We've come out of a 15, through our next 15, out of a 15, through our next 15, pick up our next one. Now we're going through our 15. So now, once you've got past your first 2 rows, you're now on your spiral. You're now really getting into it. So you know you're coming out of your 11, you're going through an 8. You're getting your changing colour. You're coming out of your 8, you're going through your 6. Round off the top of there. You're going out of your 6, coming back through your 8, out of your 8, through your 11, out of your 11, and through your first 15. Now you can see this is getting quite tight on here straight away, but what you're getting is a bigger, because we've used more beads, this section is bigger. If we have a look at this one, I mean, this will go nowhere near this, even though we've only got 2 extra 15 O's, which are tiny. You actually look at the difference between that bit and that bit. You're getting a lot less in there. So we're now going to whiz around again, and we'll do a couple of rows just to get an impression of the difference that you're getting with that size. Like I said, it's a very therapeutic stitch to do, because it's a very rhythmical stitch. So you go sort of up the row, back down the row, up the row, back down the row. If you have to stop, you know where you're, you know where you are, because you pick up, you've stopped, you've gone, you've made a cup of tea, you've come back and you're like, oh, where was I? I don't know. You can either leave something there, leave a bead on your needle, but straight away I've come out of my 15 now. My next one has got to be an 11. So it's not an issue. I know exactly where I'm at, and I'm off and running. The only time that will have I got, yeah, no, you see, didn't follow my own pattern. It's very easy to do when you're not distracted. Let me just reverse that off. If you have made a mistake, reverse it out. So if you can get your thread back through to pull that out, because that has come out of a 15, and it should have been a 15. If you can't, because it gets snagged, then just unthread your needle. Don't try and go through and through. Unthread your needle, pull the thread out, and then off you go, rethread your needle. It's the least way, the least offensive way for the beading to have an effect. Right, I'm going to take this off here in a minute. This is really struggling now. It's gapping because it wants to be tighter. So I'm going to pull that off, even though it's a bit soon. And you can see the gaps are coming. But because this wants to be tighter, let me just get hold of that there. I'm just going to take it off. I would slip down to a smaller size. That's why quite often I'll use a mandrel that's a little bit small. So it's a little bit awkward the first couple. But then it starts, as you saw earlier at the start, the same mandrel won't go through now what it would have gone through to begin with. So we're going to do one more. Let's get back to there. And that's our next row. And the only reason I know, because it's continuous, it's the row because we started with the 15s. So you can see from this how bigger. So as you make that, your spiral is going to be more sort of more curved over, but you've got a bigger gap through the middle. So if I pull this one off, this bit here is actually going to be that wide. So you're looking at it like that, but they're going down. So it's actually, you're going to have almost twice the width in that gap. So it just spreads your spiral out. To make it a less sharp spiral is where you'd add 2 of your 11s, 2 of your 8s, 2 of your 8s and 2 of your 11s. I would always just have, like I said, 1 of your backbone beads. So that is your, let me put this back on. This is your even count peyote, and also we've gone through how you can expand your spiral so you can change it. We're now going to go on to the next chapter. So in this chapter, what I want to do is do some tips on finishing, on increasing, decreasing, and changing your thread, all the little bits that go with it. So we've looked at the main structure of doing our piece. The big thing is going to be attaching a clasp, and we'll look at that in a minute. Changing your thread, I get asked a lot about. Whenever I change my thread, so I will go 3 changes of it. If you change direction through your beads 3 times, you will not pull that thread through. So if you can do 3 changes of direction, now I wouldn't just keep to the 11s, the 15s, because you're building up thread within a small place. So what I tend to do is I will go side by side. If you go side by side, you won't see the thread. It pops down between. So gently does it, pull that through there. Then I'm going to come backwards, change of direction number 2, back through there. And then I'm going to pick up the 15. So that's my 3. So this bead here, which is the last bead, that bead is not going to come out on its own, especially when you've knitted in. So I would then trim that off, but I'm not going to cut it until the end, because I've got a terrible memory. It gives me an aid to know where I am. I can tell by going round, that's the other thing. Don't do it just before you've gone off. I can tell that that's my last bead. But until you've got used to it, you're going to be looking around there saying, oh gosh, where did I start? Where did I finish? So think about that before you cut your thread. So if you're running out of thread, I would leave it until you start of your next session. And I appreciate nobody's going to do this in one sitting. You're going to take this, you know, it's a great project to take away on holiday. You can do bits of an evening, things like that. And once you've got used to doing your rhythm, it's not something once you've got the rhythm of your beads, it's not something that's a mentally intensive thing. It is something you get a rhythm, you'll be able to relax while you're doing it. So just remember, whichever you come out of, and you'll soon notice, and you'll be like, hang on a minute, I've done an 8 and then an 8. That's not right. Something not right there. So there's a couple of ways to do it. You can feed your thread back through in the same way. However, we've got 15s. They're a very fine bead. Unless they're a transparent bead, I just tie a knot in my thread, a decent knot. So let me do that again. This is my granny's patented, not patented, but granny's knot. So you make a loop, put your thread through, put your needle through, spin it around 4 or 5, 6 times, whatever, and then pull your thread down, and you end up with a knot on the end. So thank you very much, Granny. So I'm then going to feed in to the 15. So I want to come up through that, and it's quite tight in there. Come on, there we go. So I'm just going in through the middle, feeding my needle up through there, and then I'm going to come through one of the 15s. Then I'm going to work my way. I want to be on this blue bead here. So I'm going to then feed back across and work my way. I'm now going to follow where those beads have been. So the one before the 15 was that 8, went through there, and then I'm out through that 15. I'm now happy to carry on. You could get rid of that straight away if you want, but you can leave it there and undo them all at the end. It's up to you. But I now know, and I've done it in black so you can see, yeah, you can just about see that difference, can't you? You can just about see the thread. These are very pale. If it was all in black, it would look fine. If it was all in white, it would look fine, but you can see the difference where I've joined in this. But anyway, so I'd now be ready to carry on beading, and that's how I've added in my thread. To decrease, so I've got a couple of examples of decreases here. You can use this to create a cone if you want to. You can go from a very large spiral and take it down like you would see in a shell, you know, the thin coiled shells. So you can create that sort of effect, but very often you're going to use it for finishing. So if you look here, there's a couple of different ways. So I've actually got rid of my backbone bead simply by skipping it. So I've gone down to 2/8 and I've left it at 2/8 all the way pretty much to the end. So I've just decreased it by that. So if that was my 6/0, again, I could take that 6 out. You're going to get a little bit of a gap. If you go from a 6 down to these aren't so thick, but if you go from a 6 down to 2/8, you might find a gap there. So you might want to go from a 6 to an 8, and then next time, and so you'd have 3/8 there, and then next row you're going down to just the 2/8. So that's how you decrease that. You can also, so you can carry that on. So I've taken that to the extreme. Let me turn this one around. Come on, roll round. Doesn't want to go. So first off, I've lost the backbone bead. Then I've gone another couple of rows. Then I've lost an 8, or I've lost 2/8. No, I went down 1/8. Then I've lost another 8, and then so each time, if you do a couple of rows around, then you can drop the next bead. Do a couple of rows, then drop the next bead, and it just tapers it in. So you go down to this tight taper, and then if you want, then you can just use a bead loop to fasten on your clasp. So all that I mean by that is I've actually added beads. So I've done it, I tend to do it with an 11. So to make a bead loop, you're just actually adding on usually an odd number of beads. If you do it with an even number of beads, what will happen is you'll get a split in the middle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I'm going to go diagonally across. So on that example, I've tapered it, but you can go diagonally across, and you're creating this little bridge. If you have an even number, what you'll get is there'll be a sort of halfway point, and they'll meet like that. So you want an odd number, pull it as tight as you can and go through several times. You can make that big enough to do a seed bead toggle through, or you can make it small enough that all you're going to do is pop on a jump ring and attach that to the clasp of your choice. The other way of doing that is, and it's something I've started doing a lot of recently, is using French wire to create the same thing. So you have a little coiled tube of wire that you put across, you're putting your thread in it, your thread is totally protected. I still go through it twice, it's just force of habit, but you don't need to. And then you can add on your jump ring and your clasp, or straight through a clasp if you want. What you're doing is protecting the thread the same way with this, is you're protecting the thread from any abrasion by the metal. So those are a couple of ways of doing it. The other way you can do it, okay, so on this one here, what I've done is I've gone straight to a clasp, and you can see that thread. Now there's about 4 or 5 different threads going across there, and I've slowly worked my way around the top, so that wasn't pulled in, so it would have been this size to begin with, and I've gone from an 11 to an 11, and then worked my way from that 8 to that one, from the 6 over to this 15, and you're just slowly cinching that in each time you're passing the thread through the jump ring, which gives it a nice stability. Eventually that will wear through. What I would recommend, however, whenever you're finishing, if you're still going to be using the same thread, whatever you do is finish your thread before you start your loop or your attachment of your clasp. Let me just get those off. Right, so what I mean by that is I would come through, I would do my 3 changes of direction and then work my way back up to the point I want to go, because if that thread abrades or something happens and that breaks, if you haven't finished it, all this could unravel. Because you've finished it, the worst you've got to do is join in some more thread and put another means of attachment across. If you've finished it, that will stay the same. All you've lost is that thread seed bead loop. So think about that. Always finish off at the end. You can still, if you wanted, say you came back, say you've made this bracelet. Thanks very much, I love this bracelet. And you're like, well, actually, I'd like to make this. I've got enough beads. I'm going to turn this into a necklace. You can undo that and then carry on beading. This one slightly, you'd have to open it up, so you'd have to reverse that a little bit. But you can carry on even if you've finished here. So if this is a completely finished, you finished your thread off, you can then pick up and start again and just carry on, and it will take that, and it doesn't matter, and it's quite happy to do that. You can attach this. So another one, if you have a look at the one on the end, he's got quite a fancy clasp. Now inside that clasp there is a cross, so you can use very statement clasps, and those are, the interesting thing with that clasp is the 2 sides of the clasp are completely different sizes. But with the Seleni spiral, because of the way it sits, it works really well, because the smaller side works really well by there, and it'll sit by there, but the bigger one almost sits so that it's using this larger ellipsoid sitting there. So one sits sort of on the edge there, and the other one, you bead it so that it'll sit into there. So as you're attaching it, you're pulling that bit into the edge of the clasp, and the other one's got that bit, so it will fit the different sizes. So it worked so well with that clasp. The Seleni spiral worked perfectly, whereas if it was a straight straight tube or rope, you're having a difficulty. I think I had to put 2 or 3 separate pieces of rope into there for it to fill up, because otherwise it looks ridiculous, because you've got a tiny little rope going into a large clasp. So it can work with all sorts of different clasps. Like I said, when you're finishing, you can also, like on this one, just feed something through your tube, a chain or a seed bead. That's just seed beads threaded onto some thread with a clasp on the back. It looks great. You know, it doesn't have to be, oh my gosh, I've got to fasten a clasp onto it. So there's a lot of different options for you to finish these off. and you can decrease. We didn't go through increasing. To increase, it's kind of the reverse. So what you would do is, when you increase on normal peyote, you would put 2 beads in a gap. So let's say we're going to go through that one there, slightly through there. So if I wanted to increase that, I would pick up 2 beads and go through the next one. So you're forcing 2 beads into the gap, and then next time you're going to treat them as separate beads. So that's another way of increasing, and you can do that on any of the sections. So you can increase, if you wanted to, you could increase on any of these beads to create a slightly different effect. If you do it on one side only, because if you notice you're straight down, if you do it on one side only, you'll create a very interesting effect on your corkscrew, because one will be, it will be unbalanced, so it will give you an uneven spiral, which is again quite interesting to look at. So that's how you do all your, that's your top tips and tricks to do all your little pieces to do with your spiral. So thank you for joining us at the JM Academy. I'm Alison Tarry, and I hope you enjoy making your Seleni spirals.